Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and let me fix this. This is going to be my reading for Ascendance of Bookworm, Volume 1, Part 12. For some reason I looked at the other books in the series, and for some reason they go like Volume 1, Part 1, Volume 2, Part 1, Volume 3, Part 1, and then it goes to like Volume 1, Part 2. I don't know why it does that. That makes it confusing. Okay. We have we're at page 162. So we essentially have less than 100 pages to go. Let's continue. He seems like a busy person, but I'll try. Sorry if he turns me down. Hey, that's all I can ask for. Let's let out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. I could tell that he had never been able to talk to anyone about this before now. The two of us steadily kept carving without talking too much. Let's unsurprisingly had a billhook-esque knife, just like Thule, which allowed him to make several large makken out of the thick branch. I used my knife to smooth their surfaces further. I now had wooden boards to use as makken, but both of their sides were pure white. I wonder if they'll let me borrow ink from the gate. Ink was generally used as paper, so it wasn't sold in stores for commoners either. And speaking of which, both ink and parchment were stored securely together. It would be that ink was just as expensive as paper, which makes me think they're not going to let you have some. Well, I'll try and see if I can negotiate with Otto to be paid in ink from now on instead of slate pens. I can mention Litz's request while I'm at it. I'm still going to guess that's going to be a no. I want ink. There was nobody to watch over me when Thule went to work, so I went to the gate to study. I was having lots of fun now that I was learning words more relevant to my life. There were 3 new apprentices this season, all whom had been baptized along with Thule. Otto was pretty busy since he had to go back to square one with them, teaching the letters and numbers themselves, especially since he had to finish up his normal work after teaching them. While practicing words and doing calculations, I kept an eye out for a good opportunity to talk. Once Otto found a good place to stop in his paperwork and started putting up his ink, I struck. Mr. Otto, do you mind if I ask a question? Go ahead. How do you become a traveling merchant? What? Mine? Do you want to become a traveling merchant? What? Hold on. Did I inspire you by accident? The captain's gonna kill me! Yelled Otto, leaning forward across the desk with his eyes open wide. He was so surprised even I kind of panicked a bit. I hurriedly waved my hands and corrected him. Not me! My friend! Oh, whew. Tell them they should give it up. I knew it. Otto's reply confirmed to me that people did not approve of becoming a traveling merchant. What do you mean you knew it? Otto narrowed his eyes. I replied, thinking about how best to explain my perspective. My friend is also really quiet and stealthy whenever talking about this, so I figured he expected people to shoot him down if he mentioned it. Yeah, his parents would get super pissed. Plus, traveling merchants live on the road, right? They have to travel the world while thinking about what to buy and sell, when and where. Normal parents couldn't give their kids the tools and experience you would need to survive that lifestyle, not to mention them not having any important connections with merchants. So an average kid wanting to become one would probably have a really hard time. I can understand why children of commoners stuck in one city would find themselves attracted to the idea of a nomad lifestyle. But the lifestyle is so different from their own lives that their own life experience wouldn't prove very useful, which would make the work harder than it might think. It'd be day after day of doing what you thought was right and being punished for it without understanding why. You might think it best to do nothing at one point, but then you might get punished for doing nothing. There was no manual for the unspoken rules one picked up through their daily lives. I knew very well how large the walls of common sense could be given, my experience of being suddenly transported to another world where I didn't know right from wrong. But I couldn't just lock myself up inside my room without books, so I was forced to go outside where I was probably doing a lot of really weird, noticeably wrong things. I knew that. If you figured that much out yourself, why don't you take care of this? I think he'll listen to you more than me, since I live in the same city as him. Plus, I heard this from Dad, but don't you have connections to the Merchants Guild? Becoming a traveling merchant might be out of the question, but maybe he could become an apprentice merchant and leave the city to buy goods elsewhere. His family probably wouldn't protest as much as if he was leaving the city as part of his stable job, rather than him leaving on a directionless adventure into the unknown. I see your point. Judging from your tone, I'm guessing you like this boy of mine. Otto grinned, amused at the prospect of having sniffed out some romance, but I just shrugged. It's not that I like him, it's just that he helps me out a lot. Nothing good will come from letting favors pile up. A boy who helps you a lot, huh? Must be that gold-haired kid, I guess. Dad was paying Lutz to keep track of my walking pace and report back to him when we passed through the gates, so Otto had probably seen him before. That's right, but you're so busy training new recruits, Mr. Otto, that I guess you might be too busy. I have more spare time this season than any other, so sure, no problem. How about we meet up on my next day off? Thank you, Mr. Otto. But if this season was the least busy for him despite all the work he had, I could only imagine how busy he was when I helped him with the budget reports and whatnot. I didn't really want to think about it considering how I was now his assistant. Ah, right. There's something else I wanted to ask. Would you be okay with sharing some ink with me? You mean this stuff? Otto with furrowed brows tapped the top of the shut ink jar. I nodded hard, seeing the ink swash behind the clear glass. Could you pay me in ink right from now on, not slate pens? 3 years of working for free. No getting paid up front. His reply was so brisk I just blinked in surprise, not understanding what he had said. I briefly hoped I had just misheard. 3 years of working for free. No getting paid up front. Oh, so she has to work for 3 years. For free. But Otto began counting on his fingers with a serious look on his eyes. Your pay will go up if you become an official apprentice. But at the rate you're helping me now, it'll take about 3 years to afford a jar of ink, even including the bonus pay for budget season. 3 years? Ink's expensive. Otto, seeing my surprise, gave a wry grin. Looks like I need to start teaching you the words we use in budgets. Think about it. Ink's only used for paperwork involving nobles, right? It's way too expensive for kids to play around with. In short, ink was simply out of my reach. Okay, I get it. I figured that was what would happen. Although I had finally finished the Machen, I could only weep in despair as I had nothing to write on them with. The second I solved my paper problem, I realized I have an ink problem. What's with this? Naturally, there was no ballpoint pens, mechanical pencils, or even ink sold anywhere near me. I could use a pointed stick to write with if I just had ink. But that ink was too expensive for me to buy. I roughly knew the market value of a slate pencil, but since I didn't know how much the bonus pay for budget season was, I couldn't calculate how much ink was worth. How much money would working for 3 years straight even be? With the buying, finding, asking, stealing, and making being my methods of attaining ink, I could only consider making as a legitimate possibility. Yeah, because you can't afford it, you're not a way you're going to be able to find it out of luck, you can't ask for it because no one's going to give it to you, you can't steal it because, well, stealing. And making is a little bit out of the question. Nothing good would come from me trying to steal ink from the workroom. It seemed that I would have to start from scratch making both books and ink. But how do you make ink anyway? I knew about mixing pigments with drying oil, but where could I find pigment and drying oil in this world? Am I going to have to catch a squid or an octopus? Where's the ocean? I let out a yell with the half-finished Machen in hand, causing Lutz to jerk in surprise and spin around. What's with that? Lutz, what do you think this place's ink is made from? How can I make some myself? Naturally, I knew that it wouldn't be realistic to try and capture a squid or an octopus, but I had no idea what around me could be used to make ink. You know, what even is ink? A black liquid that you use to write letters on stuff, and... It was hard to explain ink to someone who wasn't used to seeing it. I just said what came to mind, and eventually Lutz replied while rubbing his chin. Black stuff. If you just want to get stuff dirty like that, why not use soot or ashes or something? That's a great idea, let's try it. Burnt firewood left behind plenty of soot and ashes so I could get what I needed at home. We would even be burning wood today. There was no doubt I could get my hands on ashes immediately. Upon getting home, I immediately asked Mom for permission. Mom, can I use these ashes? No, dear, we use ashes to make soap, melt snow, dye things, and so on. They're very useful and we can even earn money selling them to farmers. Don't take any without permission. Speaking of which, I did remember helping my parents spread ash. I had just thrown it everywhere like a granny feeding birds. Who knew that was actually intended to help the snow melt? That's news to me. We used a lot of it when making soap too, so ashes really are valuable. It seemed unlikely that I would receive permission to use ashes when they could sell the leftovers, but there was one option still left open to me. Well, Mom, what about the soot? I listed my secondary choice, and after furrowing her brows for a second, Mom smiled for some reason and said, okay. I don't know what you intend to use it for, but consider all the soot yours. This means you'll clean the hearth for me, right? Well, yeah, to get the soot. And just saying you'll get more if you clean the chimney, too. What? Aw. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Pushed on by my smiling Mom, I ended up cleaning the hearth and chimney. This hadn't been my intentions, but I had to do what I had to do. I took some cleaning tools in hand and pumped myself up to clean some soot. When suddenly my Mom stopped me in a panic. Hold it, Miney, you planning to clean in these clothes? What? Should I not? My clothes were already filthy and in tatters, so I didn't see the problem with cleaning in them. Mom grabbed her sewing box and a basket of rags while I watched on in confusion. Wait one moment, I'll be done in no time. Mom sewed some rags together and made me a new outfit, looking pleased when she finished. I changed into it, putting my hair up in an adult fashion to minimize contact between it and the dirty rags, though I wore another rag on my head as a bandana. Wow, this would suck really bad if I wasn't fooling myself into thinking I'm cosplaying Cinderella. Oh god. First I scraped out soot from the hearth, I then stuck my head inside of it and scraped off the soot stuck to the sides. It was perhaps the first time the tiny size of my body had been useful. Unable to resist my mother's smile, I cleaned the chimney while I was at it and got soot from it as well. Black stuff fell out in clumps as I cleaned, steadily giving me more of the soot I wanted. It basically honestly got kind of fun once I started, but that led to too much excitement. I got a fever and collapsed. I had worked so hard that I ended up filthy and unconscious, but I had somehow gotten the soot I needed, and now I was healthy again. I just had to somehow turn the soot into something I could write with. Mine, what are you going to do with this stuff? Mix it with the water, I guess? The first thought that came to mind was dissolving the soot in water. I got the feeling that would make something like ink. Somehow I put some river water in a wooden bowl and used a stick to mix it with soot. The soot just floated in the water without dissolving. Maybe that's enough? Try writing something with it. I took a stick with a shaved down tip and stuck it in the water, then tried writing the number 1 on the mockin. But most of the soot just stuck to the stick instead of the mockin, and the resulting number was too blurry to read. Nope, this one's a bust. What do you try next? Ink making is built around the idea of mixing stuff with oil, but I couldn't ask Mom for oil here. The reason being, our household was always short on oil since we used it for eating and for making my simple all-in-one shampoo. On top of that, we used animal oil for candles and soap, so it would be a hard battle to get any of that. They would probably shoot me down as easily as Mom shot me down over the ashes. Needing oil's rough. I'm guessing they don't give you any. Nope, none. I wish there was something. I searched my memories for a hint, and plenty of writing utensils used in Japan came to mind. I think the paint in Japanese art used glue, but that's out of the question for me since fire's too dangerous. It really sucks being so small and weak. Getting glue might be more feasible in the future, but not now. That was unfortunate because I would have been able to make something like paint with natural materials. I had no choice but to wait for my own growth. Hello, mine, you alive in there? Come back to me. I could see Lutz waving his hands in front of my eyes, but I was too busy thinking to stop. I guess it doesn't have to be liquid. Crayons, chalk, pencils. Oh, that's it! Clay! I'll mix it with clay. What? I feel like pencil lead. Wait, dang it. What the fuck? Was made from mixing graphite with clay. Wait, or maybe that was for Conte sticks. Well, whatever. I'm using soot instead of graphite, but it just might work. I could mix clay and soot, squish it all into thin cylinders, then dry them. Once they hardened, I might have some solid writing utensils. Lutz, this is where you dug out the clay for me for the tablets, right? Yeah, but you may as well just use the leftovers from back then. They should be around that rock over there. Lutz was right. There was a small mountain of clay over there. I took some of it and mixed in the soot. I was imagining a colored pencil where the whole thing was a color, or a pencil made entirely of lead. It wouldn't turn into a usable color if I didn't need it myself, so both the rock I was using as a base and my two hands turned pitch black as I molded the stuff into the shape of a soot pencil. I then split it into chunks about as long as a pencil each. If these dry and harden, it'll be my win. I washed my hands and feet in the river, but they didn't get much cleaner. But filth this persistent would definitely be good for writing. Definitely. How long do you think I should dry them? Maybe I should try cooking them? Don't bother, they'll explode again. Aww. I followed Lutz's advice and quietly left the soot pencils dry on their own. Intense battle with food. Due to Tully starting working, it became my job to prepare meals, but it was impossible for me to make a meal entirely by myself, considering that I couldn't properly hold a knife nor make fire. In the end, I just made the food with Mom, helping where I could. I wanted to take this opportunity and use it to prepare the food in a Japanese style. Unfortunately, despite getting pumped up to use my Urano Arrow knowledge, nothing came from it. Because, the game was rigged from the start. There was no rice here, no miso, no soy sauce. Naturally, no store-sold mirin or sake. There was nothing I could do without ingredients. What could I make out of nothing? And hey, I do know how to make miso and soy sauce, okay? I know what they're made of, and all that. Soybeans, koji, and salt. I even learned how to put them together. Back in elementary school, I went on a field trip to a miso factory, and the demonstrations they held were so interesting I ended up researching more on my own in the library. I thought back to that field trip. After doing my absolute best to organize the recipes for miso and soy sauce, I wrote a report with my supplementary research included. My teacher was so proud that she put it up on display in the classroom. But where are soybeans and malt in this world? Even if it were possible to replace soybeans with another kind of common bean in this world, where could I buy koji? Naturally, I was too afraid to make koji, though, through natural means. After all, koji is mold. One simple mistake and my whole family would have food poisoning. And even if I found some existing koji, I wouldn't want to ferment it in this bacteria-filled house. Not to mention that it would stink so bad my parents would throw it away before it's done. I gave up on making my own seasoning and tried hard to think of Japanese food that didn't need seasoning. What about sashimi? Maybe it tastes good dipped in salt and fruit juice. But I think the city is really far from the ocean. There's no fresh fish in the market. They don't even sell wakame or any other kind of seaweed. Forget sashimi, I can't even make a seaweed salad. No ocean meant no kelp, naturally, no dried shrimp, no fish flakes. Without these ingredients, I had no way of making the dashi soup stock that Japanese food needed. That was just a critical problem with no solution. I knew things were different here. I wouldn't ask for powdered soup stock or anything like that, but at least give me kelp or fish flakes. I did try making something similar to pickles with faux cucumbers and wine, but without any sauce or sugar, it just didn't taste right. It ended up painfully sour and unlike any pickled food I knew. Being incapable of making anything was naturally getting frustrating. So I pieced together the most simple recipe for a child like me to make and tried eating the faux cucumbers with salt rubbed in. The salt drew out some of the water from the faux cucumber and gave it a nice salty flavor, resulting in something similar to Japanese pickles. I had thought that eating anything similar to Japanese food would satisfy me, but in reality, it just made me yearn for white rice even more. Incidentally, eating the salty faux cucumbers with multi-grain bread felt so wrong that I couldn't handle it. Rice, Japanese food. Someone bless me with Japanese food, please. The faux cucumbers made me want to eat proper Japanese food so much that I got it in my head to fish at the river and do what I could there. Since I couldn't use fire, my only choice would be to dry the fish beneath the sun. Dried fish might work. Maybe it would work out if I salted the fish before drying them. I really hoped it would work out. Hey Liz, I want to try fishing. Are there fish in this river? I asked Liz by the river the next day we went to the forest. I think that'll be too hard for you. Liz's prediction came true and my attempt at fishing failed spectacularly. Fishing itself was just really hard. I slumped over depressed and Liz brought me a fish. Here, I caught one. What do you want to do with it? You don't mind if I have it? Nah, I don't need a fish. Can you start a fire? I want to cook this with salt. Unable to wait for the sun, I took the fish Liz caught for me and cooked it over a fire with salt like one would cook a trout. Ugh, it stinks. It tastes so bad. One bite later and I was scrunching my face up. Weird. It tasted and smelled like stinky mud, unlike any fish I had eaten before. Why did this fish smell so bad? I tilted my head, searching for my memories to see if I had cooked it wrong as Liz furrowed his brows. Won't it stink if you cook it wrong like that? It does stink. The fish just smelled bad. I wish he had told me that earlier. I got another fish from him, and this time I prepared it with my knife. It didn't work exactly like a Japanese kitchen knife, so the fish kind of got messed up. But that shouldn't impact the flavor. I took a carved stick and stabbed the fish with it, then tried drying it. Maybe dried fish would taste better? I went to gather firewood while the fish dried, and before I knew it, the fish had gotten so hard it was inedible. Too much of its water had evaporated. Mine, the heck is this? Dried food that got too dry. I don't think we can eat it anymore. Yeah, it doesn't look edible to me. But I might be able to get some soup stock out of it. I'll try taking it home with me. Even if I couldn't eat the fish itself, it could potentially serve as a good ingredient for soup stock. I took the hard fish home with me and tried putting it in water. Mine, what is that? Disgusting. Please don't put things like that in our pots. Mom, I want to make soup out of it. No, the only thing you can put in our pots is food. This is food, technically. The dried fish looked so gross that Mom gave it a hard no, rejecting my idea to make soup from it. Maybe it looked so gross to her because she didn't normally eat fish, and I dissected dried one just looked terrible. Kind of hypocritical since she can look at a split open pig's head and think it looks delicious. I'm sorry, Mr. Fish. I couldn't make Japanese food in the end. For now, I'll just try and think of how I can use our existing ingredients to make something closer to Japanese food, in appearance and taste. That seems like it'll be more fruitful than this. Uh-huh. In a stroke of luck, we were given a bird to eat today. One of our neighbors had bagged 5 birds in the forest, apparently, and since it's hard for his family to eat all of them before they went bad, he split them with us. Partially as thanks for us splitting some meat with them when Dad similarly hunted too much in the past. Mom was cutting up the bird. I didn't know what species it was. The knife she used for cutting meat was so heavy that neither I nor Tuli could use it yet. Mine, come now, pick up the feathers. Right. I grabbed the feathers of the bird and pulled. The sensation of the feathers popping out gave me goosebumps. I kept pulling the feathers while weepily reminding myself that it was necessary if we wanted to eat. It would be a long time before dealing with dead animals didn't bother me. But if I do say so myself, I think I've grown a lot considering I didn't scream or pass out at the sight of Mom gutting the bird. Now mine, it's time to cook. Okay, while we were at it, I thought about making broth from the bird's bones. Bird bone broth would definitely alter the range of the food's flavors. It would be no replacement for kelp or fish flakes, but it could go well with dried mushrooms. However, it was a real struggle to get that bird bone broth. Mom didn't understand what I was trying to do, and thus wouldn't help me at first. In these parts, it was normal to just cook the meat and eat them plain off the bone. I managed to convince her to at least chop the bones through by reminding her that today was my turn to cook. Everything else was up to me. I threw bird bones, tenderloin, and herbs into our biggest pot. I chose herbs which smelled and tasted similar to what I was used to despite looking different. The ones I used smelled or tasted of onion, garlic, ginger, and bay leaf. Really, I put in anything that seemed like it would help cover the smell of the meat. Mine, wait, that one's too much for you, it's dangerous. Mom stopped me before I could cut the leaves off a white radish-looking thing. She took a knife and, as if to stop it from running away, grabbed onto its leaves and held it against the cutting board. The moment she glared at the white radish and sharply cut it in half, I heard a loud scream. From the radish! What? What the fuck? A talking radish? What is this world? I blinked in surprise, wondering if I was just imagining things. When Mom let go of the leaves and slammed the flat part of the knife against it, she had crushed it just like you would crush garlic. Mom was faster at chopping up vegetables than me, so I was thankful for her help, but I noticed that the white radish was turning red beneath her knife for some reason. It looked scary, like blood pulling out. That should be enough. Be sure to wash it before you use it. Is it just me, or does Mom look a lot more dangerous than the radish? It's probably just me. Let's leave it at that. In this world, a lot of vegetables that looked familiar to me were actually bizarre and incomprehensible. Each time I encountered one of these weird vegetables, I was reminded that I really was in a world different from my own. A lot had happened, but once the seasoning herbs were inside the pot, all I had to worry about was getting out the scum that would build up. I had heard it was best to just dump all the water once you got it boiling, then refill it with water, but the scum didn't actually impact the soup's flavor, and doing all that would be tedious, so I didn't bother. Once it was boiling, I kept an eye on just the tenderloin and took it out once it was ready. I dipped it into water, shredded it, and that was that. It was ready to be put in the side for some salad. I prepared the other parts of the meat while the soup was cooking. I chopped the heart, gizzard, and other easily spoiled parts into small chunks and sprinkled them with salt and alcohol. These parts were fine to just cook with salt before eating. That was, as expected, the method of preparation my family was fastest to accept. The word char grilling ran through my head briefly, but I had other work to do, so I forgot about it. Today we were eating the organs and thigh meat. Mom would be putting her all into making something like roast chicken with the thigh meat, so I was forbidden from interfering. I salted and rubbed alcohol into the breast meat, then put it into the winter storage room. We would be using that for tomorrow's meal. If we had an airtight bag in a fridge, I would have made bird ham, but oh well, life is full of regrets. That certainly smells good. It's not ready yet. Once the smell of the soup started drifting through the air, Mom, who had been keeping her distance, started inching her way to the pot. You had to cook bird bone broth for a decently long time, so I started chopping vegetables bit by bit, while keeping an eye on the scum. Doing anything took a long time in this body, so I wanted to save time anywhere I could. The first step of my plan for making Japanese-like food revolved around the concept of a hot pot, where I could cook all the ingredients in a single pot. I had figured that once I had good broth, I would be able to make a decent hot pot. I wouldn't be able to make the kind I was used to, but now I had bird bone broth. Since I lacked any ponzu sauce, I was taking pomes, the yellow paprika-esque fruits that tasted like tomatoes, and boiling them with herbs for flavor in the hot pot. In this pome soup, I would be using the tips of the bird wings, which were too bony for regular eating, and some seasonal vegetables that I didn't know the name of. The fact that most anything tastes good when boiled together is why I respect hot pots so much. Oh, I think it's about ready. Mom, could you help me? I put a strainer on top of the second biggest pot and called for Mom. What do you need me to do? I want you to pour the soup out of this pot. It'll get rid of the stuff inside of it that we don't want. So we won't be eating all that then, said Mom, sounding relieved for some reason as she strained the chicken bone soup. I cleaned the biggest pot and had her put the strained soup into it. We used the second biggest pot the most, so it would be a pain to put the soap stock into it. My plan was to use the second biggest pot for the pome soup after all. I put dried mushrooms into the prepared soup and got to work starting the pome soup. As the wing tips boiled, I loosened the edible meat from the bones and added it all to the pot. The bones were sharp, so I had to grab the meat bit by bit, making sure not to leave any within. Mom's roast chicken was starting to smell nice, so considering time constraints, I started putting vegetables into my pot too. Mine, what do you think you're doing? Putting in vegetables? Don't you know have to parboil them first? It seemed to be normal here, but if you boil vegetables in another pot and drain the water before using the vegetables, they taste half as good. A lot of the nutrients will melt away too. I had no complaints of my mom's cooking, but I didn't want her to restrain my own cooking with her rules. This is fine for what I'm thinking, but you're just going to ruin your nice meal. It'll be okay. The pome soup was done once I took the scum out. A quick taste test confirmed that it tasted pretty good. You didn't have to parboil vegetables before using them. I'm home. I guess it was our place, huh? Hi, Thule, what do you mean? I smelled something nice on the road and got hungry while walking. Everyone started looking for where the smell was coming from. I didn't think it'd be coming from our place. It was like getting hungry for noodles after walking by a ramen stand. Bird bone broth had a pretty strong smell after all. I'm home. Oh, now I know where that smell was coming from. Dad, who had a morning shift, came home at about the same time. The bird bone broth smell had apparently traveled pretty far. Dad sat at the table with excitement on his face. Our family had gathered just in time for dinner. Al gave us a bird for today. He said it was thanks for the meat you gave him earlier. Gunter, I made it with mine. You're saying mine made the stuff I don't recognize? That's right. Mom's roast was placed in the center of the table, and beside it was salad with tenderloin placed on top. The salted organs were placed next to Dad as finger food, and pome hot soup was in everyone's bowl. The hot pot soup now looked like regular soup. What's this? It smells really nice. Can I have some? It's pome soup. I worked hard to get both broth from the bird bone soup stock, so it should be really good. Try some. Thule, her face up close to the pome soup, gave a sparkling smile and grabbed her spoon. Wow, it's so good. How? This is amazing. Goodness, it is. I was surprised to see her boiling bird bones and putting in vegetables after just washing them, but this really does taste delicious, said Mom earnestly after taking a bite herself. Given how experienced she was with this world's cooking, she must have been worried despite the good smell. Incredible, Mine. You've got a talent for cooking. Dad, overjoyed, shoved the food into his face with immense speed. Hang on. Let me see how far I got. Ooh, I can't wait. 59 more pages left, guys. Now, how far have I gotten? Okay, I think I can continue a little further. I tried eating some of the pome soup myself. The bird bone broth had a really nice flavor, and the vegetables added a lot. It tasted good, it really did, but it wasn't Japanese food. It's still good, girl. You did good. The next day I finished gathering firewood in the forest and went home as soon as possible. Small kids had to stick together in a tight group at all times. But kids like Thule, who had finished their baptism, could lead the group and do whatever they wanted with some prior notice. Thus, I went home early with Thule. I wanted to use the rest of the bird meat today, so Thule and I were sharing cooking duties. The second step in my plan to make Japanese-type food was to try and sake steam the meat. I figured that any alcohol would work, not just Japanese sake. So I'm guessing you already know what you want to make, Mine? I'm planning on sake steaming the meat and making noshi with a salad. What do you think? I don't really know what you're talking about, but okay, I'll leave it to you. First came the noshi. I boiled potatoes, crushed them, and mixed them in a bit of salt and multigrain flour. Commoners couldn't afford to just casually use wheat flour, so we were left with multigrain flour. It was mostly made from rye, barley, and oats. Once the dough was about the consistency of an earlobe, I stretched it into round sticks and chopped them into centimeter-long chunks. Could you stretch out the chunks as I cut so they look like this? Uh-huh. Tuli nodded enthusiastically after seeing me somewhat struggle to stretch out the dough while rubbing ridges in with the back of a fork and my thumb. The ridges would allow sauce to catch and stay on top of the nashi more easily. Tuli stretched out the chunks of dough I cut, one by one. She was stronger than me, so she prepared them faster and more neatly than I could have. You're better than me at this, Tuli. You think so? Mind, don't watch me keep cutting. I'll run out. I had Tuli boil some water and began cooking the nashi. When it started really bubbling and the nashi floated to the top, they were ready. I added more pomace to yesterday's leftover soup and boiled it down into some sauce. I would be mixing the nashi in before we ate, so that was all I could do right now. I think that's enough for now. We can finish the salads really fast, so Mom's coming home soon, so I think making the salad now would be smart. Tuli got to work making the salad, and Mom came home before long. Once I saw her, I asked her to get the breast meat I prepared yesterday, so I could start the sake steaming. Despite having been stored within a cold room on a cold stone, it wasn't winter anymore, and I felt compelled to sniff test the meat. Okay, it's not rotting. All good. Mine, is this the skillet you wanted? Uh-huh, thanks, Tuli. I salted and rubbed alcohol into it yesterday, so it should be ready soon. Not having any pepper hurt, but there was nothing I could do about that. Sake steaming the meat will be simple. I browned the skin side of the seasoned breast meat before flipping it, adding more alcohol and covering the skillet. Since I had the opportunity, I wanted to add in the mushrooms I had gathered in the forest. I cleaned the mushrooms and got ready to cut them when all of a sudden Tuli shouted with her eyes open wide. Don't mind, those mushrooms will dance if you don't burn them first. Huh? Tuli immediately skewered the mushrooms with a stone stick and, after salting them, heated them on the hearth fire. Mushrooms? Dance? What? Does she mean like how seaweed can wiggle around from the heat? I really don't get it. I tilted my head confused, and Tuli offered me the now slightly burnt mushrooms. Now they're okay. Thanks? I was really thrown off, but that's all it took to make them edible. Okay. The mushrooms were probably just another member of the bizarre food group I needed to be careful before judging things by their appearance. Taking care not to get burned by the heated up mushrooms, I got to cutting. Mom, which alcohol would be best for cooking? Just a little won't make it taste that much better, so I want about half a cup. Good question. This is what you want. Mom filled about half a cup with alcohol, which I took and poured into the pot by standing on something and stretching as much as I could. I put the cover back on the pot, and once the sizzling got loud enough, I took it off the fire and let it sit. Now we just had to wait for the lingering heat to do its work. You're already taking the pot off? It's already hot enough to cook properly on its own. If we cook breast meat too much, it'll get dry and hard to eat. I warmed up the nashi and poured pomace sauce made from the leftover soup, mixing them together as I did so, while Tuli finished making the salad. Just like last time, the salad was topped with tenderloin. It seemed that everyone really loved it yesterday. Today's dinner is looking really fancy again, huh? 2 days in a row. We really gotta thank Mr. Owl. Considering our financial situation, it was fairly rare for us to have this much food on the table. That bird really helped out. I'm home. Things are smelling good again. Dad came home with a broad smile. He had been looking forward to today's dinner ever since yesterday. He puffed out his chest and told us about how he'd bragged about our cooking at work. I got the feeling that in reality, he had annoyed everyone by being extremely proud and not shutting up about it. If that were the case, I'd feel kind of awkward going to the gate. Time to eat. Wow, amazing. This tastes so good, mine. Tuli's eyes shot open with joy after she bit into the sliced, sake-steamed bird meat. Mom also smiled after taking a bite. It's a simple meal, but the breast meat is soft and nice. The mushrooms add a lot, too. This truly does taste delicious. Was it because of the nice alcohol, I wonder? Maybe. The sweetness of the honeyed alcohol is really seeping into the meat. The moment I said that, Dad paled, shot up out of his chair, and ran to the shelf with his liquor bottle. He hung his head, looking close to tears upon seeing that the already small jar was now half empty. My secret stash. Sorry. But Dad, when I asked for some, Mom gave me a meaningful smile and told me that you had stealthily bought that without telling her. And that it'd be a waste if everyone didn't get to enjoy it. For once, I actually managed to read between the lines. The honeyed alcohol made the food taste great, but it was sweet in a way that Japanese sake wasn't. So the meal didn't really taste like Japanese food. It was something entirely different. I miss Japanese food. Being told all about the food here that supposedly danced and was dangerous surprised me a lot, but in the end, I could cook with similar recipes as I did back in Japan. On future days, I made potato gratin, quiche out of hardened multigrain bread dough, and so on. My family loved it all, but I personally wasn't satisfied with any of it. I lacked the seasoning and spices to even make proper Western food, so everything ended up tasting more or less the same. At least give me pepper! And I'd be extra happy if he gave me some curry powder. My struggle to improve my diet was far from over. Okay. Okay. I think I'm going to end this part off. So I will see you guys next time.